unintentionally took over babysitting duties for my sister's child, so I created a schedule for the whole family to help out. I'm 19F, living at home, working a part-time job, doing some freelance stuff and taking some online courses, all in preparation for attending college next year. My sister, 25F, had her first child 8 months ago. The father isn't involved and only pays CS. My mom is excited to have her first grandchild and is constantly offering to look after the baby so my sister can feel at ease working full-time and afterwards will have some time for herself to relax. The thing is, about 70% of the time I'll be the one looking after the baby, and while I admit that I enjoy it and like spending time with him, I can't help but feel mad because they don't have any consideration for my time. Mom would drop the baby while I'm in the middle of my lessons because you can always watch the recordings later or just ask someone to tell you what it was about. Or when I'm working in my freelance stuff because looking after the baby doesn't really require much when I complain about getting delayed in my projects. My breaking point happened last week when my mother and sister left the baby with me for a whole day because I mistakenly told them I didn't have to work and would be staying at home to catch up with some pending stuff and study. I told them both irresponsible and they called me a spoiled brat. That night, my grandma and other members of the extended family were calling and sending me messages about the importance of helping family, and to understand that my sister doesn't have it easy being a single mom. I got mad and sent a message to the family group chat saying that they were right, helping family is important and we all should be supportive of my sister. I then proceeded to write a schedule in which all of us could take care of the baby. Because one aunt goes to visit grandma on Mondays and Wednesdays mornings, they could babysit those days. Eldest Ku, Sin and her siblings are at their home Fridays afternoon? Well, they can babysit that time. And so on. I left Saturday mornings and Tuesday evenings as my time to babysit. My sister and my mom were very pleased with the arrangement. The other family? Not so much. And when someone pointed out that my sister didn't get the baby for a whole day, discussions about my sister being an irresponsible mother started, with my mother trying to defend her. Update 1. My sister did try to impose the babysitting schedule I made and the family wasn't happy. Mom, sis and I had a big discussion, hurtful things were said on both ends and I'm currently staying with my BFF and his GF, total sweethearts, but not a feasible long-term arrangement, even though they have said I could stay with them as long as I need. The family is complaining non-stop and I'm feeling guilty because technically, I'm the one who caused this by creating the schedule in the first place. Maybe I should just sucked it up, and I do really feel sorry for my nephew. All the family usually gets together on Sundays and this time, my grandma's eldest staffer, mom's eldest sister, is coming from another state. This is kind of like a big thing since she's grandma's golden child, in a good way, and kind of like the leader of the family. I'm both hopeful and nervous. If someone can solve this shit show, is her, but at the same time I'm worried about her blaming me like everyone else. I'll provide a full update then. Also, sorry for not having the time to answer all the comments and PMs, like I said, a lot of things happened. But here's some of the questions some people asked. 1. My relationship with mom and sis, it was pretty good before my sister got pregnant. We, sis and I, always knew that she was more favored by our mom because they had more common interests, while it was the same case for me and my dad. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing, think it more of a if one of us wanted to visit a friend or in specific favor, we knew which parent to ask. We would actually team up sometimes to convince them of something, me appealing to dad and sis to mom. Sadly, dad passed away 5 years ago. He was an amazing father and we were absolutely heartbroken, but the one good thing that came out of it, was that it helped us bond. Dad loved classical music and was really into IT and programming. I would go to concerts with him and he got me into gaming. After his passing, mom began to buy tickets to classical concerts and the three of us would go together as a way to remember him. We also went to watch Super Mario movie because my dad would have loved to be there, even if sis and mom knew little of the franchise. So, things going this bad makes me pretty sad. 2. My job, I work part-time at a kids after-school academy. We tutor them at the subjects they find hard and help them do their homework and prepare for test. My freelance job is video/audio editing for my BFF and his GF. Both are streamers/content creators, they know about my Reddit post but asked me to leave out their personal details, so please don't ask for their accounts. I do one weekly video for her, and 1 or 2 for him. 3. Do I pay rent? No, I don't. Dad had a hard time with his family, and while my sis and I didn't know the details and are NC with them, we kind of imagine what went down. Dad left the house to mom and make her promise to make it a safe place for us, sis and I. They decided to accept us for paying rent as long as we cover for us expenses ourselves. Sister and I cover our groceries, cell phones, some services and I pay part of their gas whenever they give me a ride because I don't have a car. 4. Extended family, as I said, we are NC with dad's family. Mom, 50Y, is the third of 4 siblings, eldest aunt, eldest uncle, deceased, was the father of the cousins I mentioned in my first post, and young uncle, 39Y, single. Grandma is currently 77 yo. 5. My nephew's dad, he and my sister were together for about 2 years. When she found out she was pregnant and wished to keep the baby, the relationship ended, as he is child-free. A paternity test was conducted after my nephew was born and he was the father. He pays CS as has no contact with the baby. His parents, nephews paternal GM and GF, do keep in touch, and by what I was told, them along with the rest of their family didn't approve of his actions regarding my sister and nephew. So far, they don't know what's going on, and I didn't involve them in the initial babysitting schedule because I'm sure that would have been another whole shit show. Update 2. I'm not sure how to post an update. If you want to know the full story, is my profile. There's an edit there with some more relevant information and questions you asked. A lot of things happened and I'm finally in the mood to write the update, so here it goes. My sister did follow my schedule for babysitting that involved our extended family, and well, they weren't happy. 2 days after my post, she left my nephew with one of our aunts. Aunt, was meeting some friends for brunch and had to take baby with her. Baby was fussy and crying and she had to come home early. Aunt was understandably pissed off. I had agreed to babysit the next day, and that's when things began going downhill. My nephew is used to be with me, but this time he was very fussy and coughing, and I thought something was odd. Mom wasn't home and I tried to call her, but she didn't answer it until about 2 hours later. She came home, checked my nephew, and he had a light fever. Of course, we called my sister and she blamed our aunt for taking out the baby. How dare she have a life while being forced to babysit? She accused our aunt in the family chat and a whole discussion blew up. Suddenly, my mom and sister remembered I was the one who involved the whole family with the babysitting schedule, and then I was the one at fault. That was my breaking point. I ended up yelling my sister that she was negligent and a part-time mother for my nephew. Not my proudest moment, and I immediately regretted it. NGL. My mother countered that if my dad, he passed away 5 years ago, listened to me, he would have been very disappointed me. That killed me because I was really close to him and he always put family above all. Still, I was mad, so I said that I expected my sister to reimburse me the amount I took out from my college fund in full. Not my proudest moment, and I immediately regretted it. NGL. Some info: when my sister and I were born, Dad and Mom set up a college fund for each of us. Dad always encouraged us to study and improve ourselves, and when my nephew was born, I took $5,000 from my fund to start one for him to honor my dad, as I'm sure he would have done the same. After that, I packed a bag and took an Uber to my BF's, best friend '/, department, sick, apartment /. I told him what happened and he and his GF invited me to stay with them as long as I needed. I blocked my mother, sister and the rest of the family and spent the following days both avoiding them and worrying about my nephew. Last Friday, I received a call from an unknown number. It was one of my eldest aunt daughters. She and her family live in another state, so they mostly follow the drama from afar, and my cousin told me they were coming to visit and my aunt was going to have a serious chat with all of us. NGL, I was really nervous. I think I mentioned this on my previous post. My mom, 50 years, is the third of 4 siblings. We'll call them Rose, eldest aunt, Mario, eldest uncle, deceased, father of the cousins I mentioned on my first post, my mom, and John, youngest uncle. There's also Jane, Mario's widow, and the aunt that I mentioned in this post that took out the baby. Rose is pretty much my grandma's golden child, in a good way, the second mother to her siblings and overall a very strong woman. She and her husband have 5 adopted children, and due to the complicated logistics, my uncle and 2 of his sons are doctors, and the just of that set of cousins is at college, so to hear that they are suddenly coming over was a very big deal. Sunday came. My BF and his GF accompanied me to Grandma's house for moral support. Rose and her family were already there and I spent most of the time avoiding my mom and sis. Deep down I knew she wouldn't dare to yell or call me out in front of Rose, as she's scared of making her angry. After some hours, Rose finally addressed the elephant in the room. It was a long, emotive discussions and we all ended up crying, so I'll sum up the main points. 1. Baby nephew is a human being, not a stray puppy to be passed around, he needs some stability. 2. Stop with the if you cal deferred to / wish to have a child, why did you have it comments. Nephew is here and he's not going anywhere, let's focus on solutions. 3. To my sis, as a mother, you need to learn to put your child first, and while it's okay to rely on help sometimes, don't do it all the time, is bad for the baby and the others involved. 4. To my mother, stop enabling her. 5. To the rest of the family, unless you're willing to offer some solutions, don't meddle in other people's affairs. 6. To me, about the babysitting schedule, well done kiddo, and I cried in relief. My sister then admitted that while she loves my nephew, she felt unfit to be a mother and wasn't fully conscious of the responsibility it would take to raise him. Apparently, my mother was aware of that and her response was to make me babysit my nephew in order to make my sister feel less stressed out. And yes, to make me hopefully change my mind about having kinds in the future. Rose also talked to Mom about that. Rose then said that, worst case scenario, she and my cousins talked and either her eldest son and daughter were willing to adopt my nephew. Apparently, both discussed it with respective spouses and all on board if it came to that. To be honest, while it's good that my nephew would be in a loving and safe home, Rose and my cousins are amazing people, it would hurt not seeing him as often anymore. Rose emphasized to my sister to think it carefully and that if it came to that, it would be a permanent adoption, not a daycare service where she could dump him for days / weeks and then pick him up later. That's mainly it. My sister will be seeing a therapist next week. Mom and I have apologized, and I clarified I didn't actually want it to be reimbursed for the money in nephew's college fund. Also, some members of the extended family also apologized for pressuring me to babysit in the first place. I'm back at my house and have compromised to babysit 3 times a week, all according to my personal schedule and for a reasonable period of time. During one of those 3 times my sister will be joining me, as she admitted she felt she didn't really know my nephew and haven't really bonded with him. So, since the baby is somewhat attached to me, the 3 of us will be spending some time together. Overall, I think it was a good resolution, but time will tell. I really hope my sis will improve and be the mom my nephew deserves. Now on to story 2. Boyfriend belittles me and makes snide remarks about my disability income, making me feel ashamed and questioning my self-worth in the relationship. My BF and I have been dating for about 9 months, know each other almost 2 years, and things have been okay. There are a few hiccups here and there, but we've mostly worked those out. My BF works in an office and makes pretty good money, enough that both of us could live on, as he's always telling me, unprompted. I, however, am on disability and have been ever since I turned 19. I've had little part-time jobs here and there, but nothing too high-paying or anything, as I would lose my disability. We never spoke much about how much either of us made or where our income came from until 3 months ago, when he started talking about moving in together. A reason I don't date much is because I'm always ashamed to tell people where my income comes from, as my disability isn't exactly something you can tell from just looking at me. BTW, I've never asked him to pay anything for me. We often go Dutch when we go out or one of us treats the other. I live at home right now and have told him that I'm okay with moving in, but that I wouldn't be able to contribute as much as he would be able to. That prompted the serious talk about income. I told him how I got my money and he was quiet for a long time, said he never would have guessed, and now my weird schedule made sense, and continued talking about moving in together. Since I thought everything was okay, I agreed and we started looking for places. This is where things have started getting annoying and downright hurtful. We've seen a few places since we started looking, but mostly we have just been looking at places online. We'll be looking on his laptop and see a place and start talking about what each of us wants or doesn't want. Sometimes, if I disagree with something he wants or doesn't want, he'll joke and say something like, "I'm not sure you should have much say about XYZ, as you won't be paying as much as I will, or my money talks louder than yours and says this is what we should get / not get," and then laugh and say, "You know, I'm just joking, I care about your opinions because you'll be living there." Or, twice, as we've been looking at places, he's joked to our potential landlord that they shouldn't ask me any questions because the only thing I'm really doing is just putting my name on the lease / rental agreement. I have never felt so embarrassed in my life, so I'll go off and look at the rest of the place and avoid him and the landlord. This is not the only things, as he jokes about a lot of things, especially since he found out about my income. He'll say things like, "I'm so tired after working all day, I wish I could just sit around like you do," or "It must be nice to get to sleep in every day, I wish I could do that, but if I don't work, I couldn't take care of myself," and they all feel like little digs at me. Now, I've known my BF for almost 2 years. He lived with his parents before we started dating, where he did not pay rent or help with bills, didn't do anything around his house, and his mother and father will go on and on about that if it comes up, even though he had a job. He's also not good with saving, so even though he was living free at home, he did not have anything saved. I've helped my parents with bills and help around the house, and have a very small savings, yet he keeps talking down on me as if all I do is just sit at home all day, collect a check, and don't do anything with it. Believe me, if I could work regularly like him, I would be working. It just seems like he's gotten super snobby or something since, and it's been grating on my nerves. I've spoken to him on numerous occasions about this, but all he says is that I'm taking it too seriously and making a big deal out of nothing, and refuses to talk about it any further. I've asked if he is fine with the fact that I don't work regularly, and he says he's fine with it, and that, of course, he makes enough for both of us to live on, so it's not a problem. However, again, he'll throw in a dig and undo anything good he has said. This is the reason I hate dating and relationships, because unless you've got some amazing job somewhere, people think you're just some slob or something, and it makes me feel so bad. Like, I don't deserve to be dating anyone. And while I've thought about leaving, I keep thinking I shouldn't leave, because will I ever find another guy who is okay with my income? Edit. Thank you all for your comments, and to anyone I couldn't get back to. I've just got a lot on my mind to think about after reading all these comments, and some things have come to my attention. I think the situation is actually more serious than I thought it was. That he was just mean when it came to joking, but apparently this is a sign of verbal and emotional abuse, and I just know I don't want to be in a situation like that. I'm going to talk to him and see what he has to say and go from there. Thank you all again. Update 1. I spoke to my BF the day after I responded to a lot of you. I decided I was going to talk to him one more time and set a boundary about these jokes, or tell him I wasn't moving in with him and that maybe we need to reevaluate the relationship. I told him I wanted to have a serious discussion, and he immediately asked if I wanted to break up with him because he figured it was coming. I was taken back because I didn't expect that reaction. I didn't say anything at first, but then I told him that I wanted to talk to him about his jokes and, honestly, his behavior in general when it comes to people and making fun of them in such a mean way, especially when they ask him to stop. I also did a little reading on verbal abuse and abuse in general, and things were a lot more clear. So, He listened to me and then told me that he didn't like people trying to change him and that his last girlfriend had tried to do the same and she couldn't accept him for who he was. He thought I would be different because I was more understanding and fun. I'll admit, that is probably one of my flaws, that I try to understand everyone's position about most things and give them far too many chances. There are exceptions, but for the most part, I will try to understand someone and work with them on it. I asked him if she, his ex, and the overweight friend were the only ones who had left him over this behavior, and he told me that he'd lost a lot of friends and dating was hard because women tended to cut out pretty quickly, again, in his words, because people are too sensitive and want him to change how he is. He seemed very stuck on being accepted as he is and angry about people trying to change him. I changed direction and asked him if he actually thought anything was wrong with what he said. I used my experiences, specifically, and told him about how I felt when we were looking at places, and he said what he said to the potential landlords. He, of course, said they were jokes and that he'd never think less of me because of how much money I made, because he kind of figured I didn't make a lot because of how I tended to do things. I asked him to elaborate and he said how I was always on things like Groupon or using coupons at stores or wanting to go out when places had specials or something, and he was never around anyone who needed to do that type of thing. So, I told him that I did think he has a problem with people who earn less and don't live a similar lifestyle to him, and that, maybe, he just didn't see it. That, sometimes, we are trying to be good because we have these thoughts of how we should be on the surface and we try to follow them. But when it's more close to home, our real feelings come out because we're faced with it more, and I told him that was okay, but that I didn't think it would work for us, that he might be more comfortable with someone who makes the same amount as him and can contribute how he'd like. He interrupted me and told me he didn't want someone like that because he couldn't be himself around someone obsessed with money and material things. Not what I said, BTW, that they'd be too concerned with money, and he liked me because I wasn't that way. I kind of ignored that, but it kind of told me that he either doesn't want someone who has as much power in the relationship as he has, or he thinks women who want more / expect more of him are gold diggers or someone trying to take advantage in some way. I don't know. Anyway, I continued and told him that even if he felt they were just jokes, they were wearing on me and my self-esteem, and I couldn't live that way. I also told him that it's natural for people to not want to change when they've been a certain way for a long time, and so it seems right to us, but that change can be good. And maybe therapy could be good at helping with that. I told him that it's wonderful to be accepted for who you are, but if who you are is, well, jerkish, people are a lot less likely to accept you unless they are also jerks, and nothing good can come from a bunch of jerks getting together because they'll be toxic to other people, as well as to each other. And I told him I think he's better than that he deserves much better. That any woman he truly loves deserves much better than being verbally abused and made to feel like they aren't as equal or worthy. He sat there and didn't say anything for a while, just looked at me and sighed a lot. He finally said he was disappointed in me for wanting to abandon him because he thought we were true soulmates, and he couldn't believe I was saying such abusive stuff about him. I was shocked he was calling me abusive because I didn't think I was being abusive by telling him why I don't want to continue if this is how he will act, and that the way he acts is not, well, good. Maybe I went a little far in saying anything about a future girlfriend, but I guess I wanted to impress on him that, if his friends and partners keep leaving because of this behavior, everyone will keep leaving. The only partners willing to stay will be someone who dishes it just as well as they take it, and he knows he's actually very sensitive and wouldn't like that, or it'll be someone who lacks any self-esteem and he'll make her feel even worse about herself until she breaks down. I could feel myself getting to that point, and that's why I'm so angry and frustrated. Not only with the fact that he was now turning all this around to me being abusive, but that he still didn't really seem to get what I was saying about my feelings. It made me realize, yes, I need to leave this situation, and I do feel bad about it because I do feel like I'm abandoning him, but at the same time, it just doesn't seem like my feelings or anyone's are important to him. So why should I stay with someone who doesn't seem to get that his behavior isn't exactly such that gets people to stay in his life? I realized I probably wasn't going to get to him, and the conversation itself had me shaking because I was upset and disappointed, myself. However, looking back, I could see signs that this is who he is. Other people's feelings just don't mean a lot to him, and doing some soul searching, I realized that I, stupidly, thought he would change over time, but waiting on that is wearing on me, and our last conversation tells me that he doesn't see anything wrong with what he does, so it's unlikely he will change. He didn't seem interested in saying anything else besides that he was sorry I felt the way I did. I told him that I thought we needed to give up on things and find someone better for ourselves elsewhere. He didn't say anything, so I just left. A few hours later I got a confusing text from him telling me that he hadn't seen who I was and that I had abusive tendencies. I didn't respond and just blocked him on everything. I'm sad things ended the way they did, but it was probably for the best. I'll either be good alone or I'll find someone who I work better with.